Hi everyone! In this video we are going to discuss a very different strategy compared to the previous videos. In the last videos you learned about 3 strategies to conduct empirical research, aiming at getting results from data that the research has collected through fieldwork. Now you will learn more about how you can use existing datasets through what we call the desk research strategy to apply to your own research. The most important thing to be aware of when using existing data for your analysis is that the data, contrary to what you collect in empirical research for your own purpose, this data was collected for a different purpose than yours. This is what we call the strategy of desk research. Now there are 4 different types of analysis you can do on existing datasets. When you want to analyze existing text, you are conducting what we call a content analysis. Analyzing the results of several existing studies is what we refer to as a meta-analysis. But you may also choose for a comparative and historical research, where you examine or compare societies or other social units over time. And lastly, you can do statistical analysis, which is applied to existing datasets. As you can see, desk research can be both qualitative and quantitative. We will discuss them both in this lecture. But why would you choose to use secondary data instead of collecting your own empirically in the first place? Well, in deductive research, so from theory to data, a reason to use secondary data might be that you want to study global or country-level phenomenon. If we go back to Hannah's example of the bicycle used for commuting, you might have found from the literature that there are several aspects influencing this. If you would like to study this in, for example, all major cities in the Netherlands, using statistics from the National Statistics Agency might be your best option. If your research aims to test or explain general relationships without in-depth study, it can also be a good choice. Using secondary large data sets, like the one described before, would enable you to statistically analyze these relationships of, for example, the different aspects influencing bicycle use. And thirdly, when you are interested in changes over time, secondary data might actually be the only possible source of information. Secondary data will enable you to discover trends over time, like how the use of bicycles as a mode of transport has changed over the past years. In inductive research, so from data to theory, secondary data analysis can be helpful when the data on the topic is available and abundant, and primary data collection will not contribute any new information. This is both applicable in secondary qualitative and quantitative data. Now, let's focus on secondary quantitative data. Indeed, when referring to secondary quantitative analysis, we are talking about existing datasets through statistical analysis. So then, what are the advantages of secondary quantitative analysis? Let's sum them up. Using secondary data allows you to cover trends over a long period of time, or panel research, as I also mentioned in the survey video. It also enables you to cover a large geographic scope, and it can be considered more time and cost effective than empirical research. You can make use of renowned sources which provide high quality data, and this data in open access will enable you easy replication in future analysis, increasing the reliability of the research. And lastly, it ensures a high external validity, as quantitative analysis allows for generalization of the results. But there are also elements that may negatively impact your validity and reliability when you use secondary data. Indeed, an important challenge in using secondary data in general is that you have to always be aware of that it is collected for a different purpose than yours. This applies to both qualitative and quantitative data. It therefore might not perfectly fit in with your research question, or in the case of quantitative data, not cover all the indicators that you might need. This influences the validity of your research. Another challenge in terms of validity is that your operationalization of the variables might be influenced by the existing data, which might lead you to a different operationalization than you would have had otherwise. An important element to also take into consideration is that the access to data might be restricted. So you might not be able to obtain this data in certain contexts. And data quickly becomes outdated. There are also some constraints in terms of the reliability that you have to think about, like the data may have been influenced during the collecting and the coding processes. The source of data and other attributes might not always be clear, and it might be incomplete or contradictory, which distort results. When you're processing the data, you must also be aware that merging data collected at different moments in time is not reliable, but also merging data sets with different measurements is problematic. So clearly, also this strategy has its limitations. Well, this was the final video about the research strategies. Hopefully, you gained more insight in the 4 relevant strategies, namely the survey, the quasi-experiment, the case study, and desk research. Next week, these types will be hopefully less abstract for you, as the data collection methods will be discussed. Thank you for watching.